Hi, this is Everett's Watercolors. Welcome to my classroom. Today, this video is for stampers who enjoy using watercolors in their stamping process. And my wife bought a GinaK Design kit, a card kit called Time for Coast. And I thought it'd be a little bit of fun to take a couple of these stamps and put them on watercolor paper and see what we can do with them. To use them for framed art or to use them as a card. So let's go to my painting table and let's get started. Oh, I'm actually going to do two paintings here and maybe possibly a greeting card. And these were stamps from GinaK Design Time to Coast card kit. And my wife stamped these stamps on a piece of my Gemini watercolor paper in the sizes that I have here. And I'm going to go ahead and get to my first preparation step is I'm going to use my Fineline mask fluid pen, and I'm going to mask in some of the areas. This masking pen just protects the will protect the white paper. Okay, that's number one. Number two, I want to mask out the seagulls because they're actually they have a lot of white feathers on them. So I want to save out. But I want to do something special here with watercolor. And I'll want to mask off some of the highlights here. So I'll put in some highlights here. I want to mask in. And I might put a little bit, maybe I'll just put a little white here to save some of the white paper here on the in the water. Okay, now I have to let that dry. Okay, on the first painting, which is the lighthouse and the rocks, I'm going to paint in the sky first with watercolor. And I have I mixed my colors. This is cobalt blue mixed up here on the palette, and this is cerulean blue. So I'm going to start out with a darker color at the top. This is a 3/4 inch flat natural hair brush, and I load the brush with paint. The consistency is about the consistency of skim milk, not too thick and not too thin, but it's not, you know, it's not real heavy watercolor, but it's a nice quality. Okay, and this is on dry. I'm going to do a dry, this is dry paper, so I'm going to start out here at the top, and I'm going to go across. Now I've got my I've got some portions here. Remember, I blocked it out with I'll rinse out my brush. I blocked it out with masking fluid, so I can go over top of the lighthouse without worrying about getting it painted. I'll come down with a lighter value down toward the water, down toward the horizon. That's far enough. Okay. Now, then I'm going to wait for it to set for a minute here. And now I've got a tissue. I'm going to make a couple clouds up in the sky. So what I do, I take a tissue and I roll it up. So I call these clouds, I call these tissue clouds. So you take a tissue, roll it up into a roll, and I'm going to make some clouds. And then I'm going to go up here and I'm going to, while the painting is still wet, And I can shape it a little bit by picking up some more. And I'll move the paper around a little bit so I don't want to use the same spot. I'll go over here and make another one over here, a little smaller. And then one more. A little smaller. The clouds get smaller as they get closer to the horizon. Okay, I'll let that dry. So I got 3 clouds in the sky: large, medium, and a small. 3 sizes of the clouds. Now let the sky dry. Okay, the cloud is still the sky is still a little bit damp, so I'm going to go ahead and paint the water. I'm going to use the same colors here. So the cerulean blue first. I'm going to go ahead and put in the water line. And leave some white paper, because there's little white caps out there in the water, so you can leave some white paper. I'll start over here on this side. Again, leave some white paper. Just show little white caps or little movement of water, where it's splashing air in the water, in the breeze and so forth. A little wave action. Now I'm going to start picking up a little bit of that cobalt blue now. So the water is going to be lighter value here, then as I come forward, it's going to be darker. Now the color of the water is reflecting from the color of the sky. So the darker value will come down here to the foreground. As I come forward, the waves are going to get a little bit larger. So the little white areas are going to get larger. A little more cobalt blue in the brush, a little bit darker. Okay, I'll let that dry. Okay, on this second card, or second painting with the bird on the piling, I'm going to wet the background. So I'm going to use my spray bottle, and I'm just going to wet the paper. What I'm going to do in this one, I'm going to do a sunset sky. I see a lot of birds in the sunset. You don't see too many out there. So I'm going to start out with the blue at the top, cobalt blue. And I'll pick up, this is pyro red, which is a very bright, powerful red. Remember, I cover the bird with masking fluid. And we'll put some lemon yellow down here at the bottom. So continue on with that a little bit. I'll pick up a little bit of the red, but I'm reflecting from the sky, so same colors are going to be in the water. And I'll finish up with the cobalt blue at the bottom. Okay, then I'm going to sprinkle a little bit more water on the paper, just a little bit, just to keep it wet. And I'm going to move the paper around just a little bit. I'm going to make it, let the painting run a little bit. So by holding up like this, I get the paint to move up and down and around. Hey, a little more color in the, just adding a little more color, get some more mixes going on here. Okay, I'll let that dry. This part here, I'm going to add some color to the Lighthouse painting. Now I'm mixing up a little bit. Now what I did a little, I always do a sketch, just a planning sketch before I start painting. And this is my sketch here on the left. And what I did, I need a little more features to this scene. I'm going to add some trees in the background along the coast behind the lighthouse and the rocks. I think it looks a little more appropriate to have a little landmass back there. So I mixed up a little bit of green, which is green number 1, mixed in with a yellow. And I'm painting in a like an undercoat here of color along the coastline there, and it'll be a row of trees. Could be a small forest or whatever, but a little bit of interest back there, a little bit different here on this particular scene. It's such a small area on the stamp there that I wanted to fill a little more of the background to give it more of a landscape feeling. And I think the tree mass back there goes in quite well with the scene here. So I'm putting in kind of a middle tone color right now, just to get the mass in there and the basic color. I'm going to leave a little bit of white paper there. That's going to simulate possibly some waves hitting the shoreline there. So I'm leaving that white paper there at the bottom to show. And now I'm moving over to the left side also. I'll get the trees behind that, lighthouse. Give a little better structure, a little better scene to look at. So this tree mass was an added feature to the scene. I'm mixing up some colors here for the rocks. A little bit of yellow ochre, a little burnt sienna. Get a nice rock color. Again, this is the first coat. Painting in the light layer on the rock formations. I think this will give it a little more. I'm going to build some texture here, but I want to get a color started here. So I start out with a light color, a rock color, a little bit of yellow ochre, a little bit of burnt sienna, and I'm kind of filling in the area. I'll leave a little bit of white paper showing also. I might leave a highlight above the rocks, but kind of shape those rocks there in the foreground. And I'm adding a little bit of rocks along that coastline. I think that's pretty apparent here with the rocks in the water. There'll be some rocks along the coastline. So I'm adding a little brown back in there to simulate maybe some rocks along the edge of that landmass there in the background. I'm kind of building this up as I go along, just using a little bit of instinct, a little bit of ideas of what could be added here to make a more interesting scene, a more interesting landscape. I'm going to mix up some more colors here. This is a little bit of cobalt blue, a little bit of ultramarine blue. I'm going to mix it in with a little bit of quinacridone violet. I'm going to make a light violet color. Mixing up a little light violet. And I have another idea here behind the lighthouse and behind that landmass. Adding some more water to lighten it up a little bit. And I'm going to paint there on the left side in the background. I'm thinking about putting another landmass, and this would be a far off distant mountain range or hills in the background. Again, to give a little more interest here to this landscape. So this is another feature I've added to this scene. This would be a far away mountain or far away hills behind that tree line off to the left. I'm going to leave a little white paper there also to show a coastline, possibly some waves splashing up on the shoreline. This is another added feature that I think could make this scene more interesting, is have a couple different landmasses behind the lighthouse. This lighthouse is located along the coast, so we're looking at a coastal scene here. Yeah, a little bit of tissue. Just what that does, it lightens up the color just a little bit. 'Cause I want that to look way back in the background. Give it a light color. Okay, now I'm going back to the seagull scene on top of the post, and I'm taking off the masking fluid. This is a mask pickup tool. It's just a piece of, it's a rubber cement pickup is what it is, just a piece of rubber. But it picks up the masking fluid. So I'm removing the masking fluid now from the poles there in the water, and in the water itself I'm taking off some of the masking that I did. The masking fluid protected the white paper, so that I can go back in now and put in some darks and lights next to that background color. I'm using my left hand to feel for the masking fluid. Masking fluid leaves a little rough spot, so that's the way to check the masking fluid has been removed. Now at the same time, taking a look at my other scene with the lighthouse. I'll bring it up close to you to show you where we are right now. So it's coming along very nicely. I had put in some dark values there also on the rocks. A little bit of darker brown mixed in with the blue. And there's the close-up scene right now of the seagull on top of the poles. Now mix up a little darker brown. I'm going to go in and now put in a little bit of yellow ochre on the poles. Again, this is a light color. I'm going to build the colors up here gradually. Start out with a light color. This is yellow ochre on top of those poles. Trying to leave some of that white paper around. Might put some more highlights in there, but just leaving a little bit of white paper showing. But basically getting started with a light layer of yellow ochre just to get me started on a color. I'm pulling in a little bit of Payne's gray, which is a dark color, and that it's also, I can put water in it to give me a gray. So I'm going to put some darker feathers on the seagull. They usually have a darker tail and a darker back feathers to be more realistic of the seagull. So here I'm adding in some darker color, a light gray and a darker gray. A little shadow pattern, just a little shadow on that seagull to show a little form, a little shadow on the left side. The sun is coming from the right down to the left, and adding a little darks there on the post. So here I'm trying to shape a little dimension on the seagull, give a little more interest. A little more definition. Now I'm fixing up a little darker brown. I got a little bit of burnt sienna mixed in with ultramarine blue to give me a darker brown. And I'm going to go in and put in a little more definition on those poles. So these are the shadow areas to break up that shape. and show a dark side and a light side. Give a little more dimension. Adding a little definition. Making some dark marks. Those poles have been out there for a while, so it looks a little weathered. They're going to have dark spots, areas that are darker than others. I'm working on the other side of that big pole, putting a little darker value, a little darker shadow pattern in there, just to break up this shape. Defining the edges. A little more dimension. By putting the lights and darks in there, you get the form and you'll get the dimension of the particular object. Working along the base there, give me a little shadow pattern into the water. And also it's going to be wet down there, and it's going to have a darker value at the bottom of the pole because of the water. I'm using different colors here. Now here is there's a strip across there, so I'm getting another color. Could be a little bit of brown, a little bit of light brown across there. Just working a little bit on the shapes, a little bit on the design of the stamp. I'm using the marks that are on the stamp, and also enhancing the color, giving a little more variety of color, a little more dramatic coloring. Putting darks and lights to show off the edges, and that smaller pole in the background, giving it a little bit more value, a little more color, give it a little more shape, a little more definition. Now in watercolor and in art, all you have to work with is color and value, and the values give you the dimension, the lights and darks. The colors give you the information about what it is possibly, and here I'm working in the water. I think the shadow pattern in the water is also an important feature. I added that into here to give us some more interest, to show waves in the water, and I show the reflection of the poles in the water. I think that gives it another interesting aspect of the poles next to the water. A little bit of shadow pattern, a little bit of reflection. That the reflection is always broken up with the wave action of the water, so give it a little more realistic look. And go back to the lighthouse scene. I'm going to take off the masking fluid. I had put masking fluid on the lighthouse to protect it while I painted the sky, and some of the rocks have got some masking fluid on. Just to give it an area that I could put some more highlights on. So I'm taking that off with the rubber cement pickup, which is a great tool for removing masking fluid. Now I'm going to add a little bit of detail here now to the lighthouse. I've decided to add a little red to the scene. I got a lot of green, a lot of blue, so just to put a little more, and I want the lighthouse to stand out a little bit more than just white and black, so I'm going to add a little red to the scene here. A little bit of red paint up there at the top, on the top of the lighthouse, and I've decided to put some red stripes. I thought this would be a really interesting design. Put some red diagonal stripes around the lighthouse that really give it a better attention, give it a lot more interest. A little bit of freehand watercolor stroking here. Just making sure I keep the spaces equal, keep the angles about the same. But again, it just gives a little more interest into this particular scene. And I think the red and the green turn out, because they're opposite colors on the color wheel, so that gives your eye a real attractive thing to go look at. But this will really make that lighthouse stand out, which I think is the impact or the focal point of this particular painting. So I want to give it the center of attraction, give it the brightest colors, the more interesting colors, and the small strokes, so forth, the little small marks also give it a larger wave, increasing the impact. And I like the way that's looking. I like the way that's coming out. Every lighthouse I've ever painted or seen has always got a different color configuration, identification of what the lighthouse is, and so forth. So that just, to me, that's a good characteristic of a lighthouse. Now here I'm adding a little bit of color to that. There's a little building off to the right side. That's where the tower watchman stays. The lighthouse keeper, that's his little house. I'll put a little red on the roof there also to match the red of the lighthouse itself. I'll give you a little close-up what that looks like. And I think that's really coming out very nicely. Now the Seagull Scene with on the post, again, I'm going to add some more contrast here to these poles. I want to make that pole really come out. So I'm adding a little more darks. I think it needs a little more dramatic dark areas to the post. So I'm adding a little more color to that area. Little dots and dashes, that little band that goes across there, giving it a little more definition. So I'm using the design from the stamp. I'm going in and adding the colors to enhance some of those features. And I'm adding the darks in there to give those poles a real rough looking characteristic of being out in the water with a lot of dark grooves, some wear and tear on the wood. So I'm really trying to give some real character to this these poles out here in the water. So these darker areas are really going to give the emphasis here on the scene with the seagull and the post in the water. And the more contrast, the more lights and darks we have, the more dramatic we have. Makes it a better scene and a more interesting scene to have those darks and lights working together. I'm working on shadow patterns, working on small details, a little more shadow on the seagull, a little more emphasis. Yeah, that's going to complete. I'm going to give you a nice close-up now of there's a seagull scene with the post. You can see the details I've added, the lights and darks, and a nice contrast of colors. And a real close-up of the lighthouse. Again, you can see, I think the background really turned out nice. You got a couple birds in the air, and I think the water looks good too with those white waves. So these paintings, I've framed them. This is the framed art of the lighthouse. And I framed also the seagull on the post. I thought this was a framed art. But now you can also convert these to cards. Now this is this is an A6 size, 4.5 by 6 1/4 inch template, which can be added over the work of art and turn it into a greeting card. All the supplies you've seen on today's video are available at my website, everestwatercolors.com, and the dot spray bottles turn out great. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and give me a thumbs up. It helps my rating. Press the bell and be notified of my next video. See you on the next video.